Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with number 105 in the series Viewers Games, and also the 11th move in the legendary match Rick against the Chess to Impress viewers, the game that you and I are playing against each other. If you would like your game to be analyzed on Chess to Impress, you can send it to me by email to classroomchess64@gmail.com. It is the turn of Mark from the Netherlands. Hello, I'm a student from the University of Delft. Currently I'm a first year master student in structural engineering. At the age of 12 I achieved a 10th place in the Dutch National Elementary School Chess Championship. Since then I haven't played too much on a real board and my rating barely increased. However, I still like the game and play online. Especially the variations on Lichess keep chess interesting for me. In this game I played the Blackburn Gambit, which I had not played too much since I was experimenting with new openings. I think there is much to learn from this game, says Mark. And Mark had the black pieces, so let's look at the game from the black side. It was an over-the-board game in the chess club in Delft where Mark lives. I don't have the exact time control details, but it must have been a classical game with classical time control, otherwise Mark would not have all the moves. Mark's opponent opened with e4, his name was Matja, and Mark played the Scandinavian defense. And after that pawn was taken, the main move is queen takes d5, just take back. You can also delay taking back and play knight f6 first. But the Blackburn Gambit was played by Mark, as he mentioned it in his introduction, with c6. Black is giving up a pawn for quick development. Mattia took the pawn, knight takes, knight f3 and bishop g4. That move was played by Mark, but Blackburn himself played e5 in this position. Bishop g4 was played by Mark. Let's put the moves on the board. Both sides are developing their pieces. e6, the bishops get developed. The knight goes to d2. Mark castled and Mattia castled. h6, rook e1 and rook f2 d8. Mark writes, the game got very positional. And that is the problem I have with Black's play so far. He sacrificed a pawn on move 2, but since then he has sensibly developed his pieces, put his king safe, but has not shown anything special to justify being a pawn down. Usually when a pawn is gambited, the play does not get very positional, as Mark calls it. White played queen a4, a6, the rook went to the center, and Mark kicked White's queen, which went back to c2. Here the engine gives bishop f5 as a nice move, kicking the queen again. And after queen c1 it plays knight d5 and black is going to take on e3, gaining the bishop pair. This is a more dynamic way of playing for black. But after queen c2, Mark did not play bishop f5, he moved his rook into the center, rook ac8. a4 from white. Queen stepped aside to give the b5 pawn enough protection. White took, Mark took back, and knight e4. That was answered by knight d5 from Mark, and now it is white who is gaining the bishop pair. He's a pawn up, and he has the bishop pair. White is better. Queen b3, and here the engine gives knight a5 as the best move, kicking the queen. And if you take on b5, winning another pawn, then at the end of that variation there is rook b6. Kicking the bishop and attacking b2. So black will win a pawn back. After bishop d3, he can take on b2. And black has compensation for the pawn he is still down. He has infiltrated in white's position. And for example, this pawn is very weak. So all that after queen b3 and then knight a5. Which gives black compensation. Mark did not find that move, he played b4, c4, kicking the knight, and now knight takes e3, and queen takes is fine here, but white took with the pawn towards the center, f takes e3. Rook a8 on the open file, that's where rooks want to be. Rook a1, opposing on the open file, and this rook on d6 is somewhat misplaced, so it went to the back rank. Rook a4, preparing doubling of rooks on the a file, so Mark took it, queen takes, and gains the tempo on the queen with rook a8. Queen went to b5, offering a trade of queens, and Mark went for that, and played knight e7. Let's look at this position. The pawn formation on the b file is very unusual. We don't see this every day. But in this position, the pawn on b5 is very important. It's an extra pawn for white, and it's well protected by the bishop, and it's quite far advanced already. And that is the reason that white is much better in this position. That b5 pawn is a real asset for white. He played rook c1 on the open file, and now Mark played rook b8, and I do not really like this move. The rook is passive on the b file, and rooks don't want to be passive, they want to roam free. Black is not going to win the b5 pawn anytime soon, so you don't really need to put a rook there. As we'll see, square b8 is an unfortunate square anyway, for another reason, as we'll see in a few moves. King f2 was played by white, centralizing the king somewhat, and black, Mark, did the same, king f8, and that's a bad mistake because of a tactical problem with this move. Knight d5 would have been better, but black is still in trouble. But after king f8, white's advantage becomes decisive. Do you see the refutation of king f8? Bear in mind what I said, that b8 was an unfortunate square for the rook. The move here, the best move, which was found by white, is knight e5. A multi-purpose move. It's attacking the g4 bishop, which is unprotected, and it's attacking the fork on d7, which will win a full rook. And black cannot solve both problems in one go, so he's going to lose an exchange. Bishop takes e2 is really the only move. There comes the fork, king e8, and there goes the rook. Black is a bit lucky that at least he can take the b5 pawn. Some consolation that at least that dangerous pawn is now off the board. But white is winning with an extra exchange. It still needs some technique though from white. He played rook c5, attacking the bishop. Bishop went to d3, and now knight c6. Nice move. If you're ahead of material, it's good to try and trade pieces, but not necessarily pawns. Because the pawn on b4 is hanging, black really has to take that knight off the board. The knights were traded, and b3, getting the pawn on a light square where it can be protected by the light squared bishop. That makes sense. Rook b6, immediately attacking that b pawn, and bishop c4. Bishop c2 was also a move that is possible. At least the bishop is protected by the pawn in that square, but bishop c4 is okay. White is still winning though, but he has to show it. He played e4, g6 from Mark, king e3, and f5. Mark's only hope is that he can swap all the pawns on the king side. Then the endgame will be drawn if only these two pawns are left with bishop against rook. Rook b4, nice move from white, causing black to give up the protection of the b3 pawn. Maybe he should have gone to c2 a few moves ago. That may have been a bit more resilient. Now the bishop cannot stay on this diagonal. It went to f1, attacking the g2 pawn, and white is not in a hurry to take on b3. He first saves his g pawn. F takes e4. Now white took on b3 and king d7. Why not protect his e pawn instead with bishop g2? Well, I think Mark was probably worried that his king would get cut off on the bottom rank with something like rook b7, and that's why he played his king to d7. White took on e4. He's now in exchange and a pawn up, and his king is nicely centralized. The job becomes easier and easier for white. Bishop c4 from Mark. Mark keeps fighting on. A game was never saved by resigning, and he's right to play on. Rook b8, king d6, rook c8, hitting the bishop. Bishop went to b3, rook c3, hitting the bishop again, and the bishop went to a2. And white knows the saying, passed pawns must be pushed. The black king is cut off, cannot pass the c file. White is playing this very nicely. h5 from Mark, there really is nothing better to do. The b pawn keeps going. g5, b6 and g4, but that pawn doesn't go anywhere. There still is a little trick. Don't push the pawn to b7, because then there is a bishop fork. Check, and the b7 pawn will fall. King f4, bishop takes b7, and white will have to start again. He's still winning, but he lost his beautiful b pawn. White didn't fall for that. He did not play b7, he played rook c5. Bishop d5 check, and now the easiest win is to give up the exchange with rook takes d5 check, e takes, and king f5. Black has to worry about the b pawn still, so king c6, king e5, king takes pawn, and this is a very simple win for white. You and me would win this game against Magnus Carlsen if he had the black pieces. But after bishop d5 check, white did not go for that king and pawn endgame. He played king f4, which is also fine. Mark has one last trick, e5 check. Don't take that pawn with check, because then your rook is unprotected, and it is black who will win this game of chess. But after e5 check, white did not take on e5, he played the king back to e3. No rush. Mark took on d4 with check, king takes. Now the bishop is hanging, so bishop f3. There goes another pawn, king c6, and rook h6 check, protecting the b pawn, and Mark had enough. He threw in the towel, and white had won a very nice game. Well played, Mark. Thank you for showing this game. As I always say, you learn a lot more from defeats than from victories. You played really well. In my view, you should have played a bit more energetically after gambiting the pawn on move 2, the Blackburn gambit. You developed your pieces well, brought everything in play, put your king safe, but when you gambit a pawn, you need to show something as compensation for that pawn. There were a few moments that you could have done that, but in the game you got slowly outplayed by a very good player. As you said in your introduction, I think there is much to learn from this game. Well, I fully agree, and I hope the viewers of the Chess to Impress channel enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Mark. And what about our game, Rick against the Chess to Impress viewers? Let's put the position on the board. We have arrived at move 11. Let's see what happened. I played bishop g5, you kicked my bishop back, I went to e3, and now it was your move, and let's see what you came up with. 28 viewers put in a move in the comments underneath the 3 videos from last week, and as you can see, 11 of the 28 voted for rook f8 to e8, so that's the winner. 8 people wanted to take on d5, and 6 people wanted to close the center with e5. 1 vote for bishop d7, queen e8, and knight back to d7. So rook e8 is your move, and now it is my move. What do I play on move 12? Well, I've decided to develop the queen from d1 to c2 and connect my rooks. So now it's your turn again. What would you play here on move 12? Please put your move in the comments underneath this video, and by doing so you will be in the raffle. At the end of the game I will raffle a chess book which was made available by my sponsor, The Beste Zet, a web shop for chess books. You can find a link in the description box underneath this video. So what would you play here? Please put it in the comments underneath this video, and I hope you will take part in our game. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. If you like the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.